Dale Stewart was testifying, and we did not want to rush through that or not give him an opportunity to add anything at the end. So we would pick up where we left off with Mr. Stewart. I'll have you take our oath. You solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that the testimony you're about to give the commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right. I think we left off around the point that you receive the product and unload the truck.
Correct.
If we were going through this in process order. So from there, can you explain the process of reloading the truck, how you divide the product by store, and how you send it out?
Sure. So the product comes in and we unload it. It's already palletized by each individual store. So when I send the orders off on Mondays for the following Monday to each one of my suppliers, it's broken down by store for each supplier. So when they load it, it's loaded by that individual supplier for that individual store. And once it comes in, it's unloaded. We do all the paperwork, the invoices. We reload that product onto the truck. At that time, I give the driver an invoice, sign all the bill of ladings for the delivery to me, the paperwork forwards to the next stop, as well as the invoices for the individual stores. And then it's sent on to the individual stores.
How do you prepare the invoices?
I will prepare those based on my POs. And then on Friday, I will get any discrepancies from any of my suppliers. If there's any shortages, anything like this. Then on Monday morning, I print those invoices to be ready for when the trucks come in. And then those are sent with the product to the individual stores. If there's any type of breakage, which occasionally happens when we're unloading or something breaks on the truck, then it's noted on the invoice that there's breakage and it'll be subtracted from the invoice.
So the driver handles your invoicing to the store?
Yeah, I hand it to him to hand to the receiver at the back dock.
Do you maintain any additional documentation of invoicing the retailer? Or is it you're just relying on the contracted driver to handle your invoicing?
The contracted driver to make sure that they get the individual invoices. And if for some reason there's an issue, the individual stores will call me and say, you know, if there's a problem that either, hey, the truck just came in and he doesn't seem to have an invoice, then I'll reach out, figure out what's going on, either email them a copy of it, but usually they just have it sitting on the truck as well.
Yeah.
Does that mean you have no copies of the invoices at that point, just that original that goes to the driver that then goes to the store?
I have the copies for me, but yes, I do not have a copy back from the store, if that's what you're asking me.
When you prepare these, you said on Friday, I think.
Yes.
And
Well, Monday morning is when I actually print them and
that's
everything.
when you print it.
Yeah.
So you prepare these on the computer?
Yes,
So you do have electronic information or available printed copies of those invoices?
yes.
But if you have to note any breakage or changes, you wouldn't have a copy of that.
I will make the changes back on what's the original invoice on my computer of anything that's adjusted.
And so that happens at your warehouse location?
Well, it depends on when if it happens there, yes. So I'll go ahead and do it right then and there to make the adjustment before I forget about it. So,
And then you print a new copy to give to the driver?
no, I just hand adjust on the actual invoice that's going out.
So then you have two versions of the invoice?
No, because I'll subtract off. So if there's a breakage of a case of XYZ, I'll subtract that off, adjust the total cases and the total price amount of the invoice, and then go back in and do electronically on my invoice as well.
But I'm a little bit confused. I think you said Friday you get information from your suppliers?
If there's any type of shortages or anything like that, Because on Friday is when the orders are put into the trucks. That's when they're picked up to be shipped. So if there's any type of discrepancies at the warehouse in New Jersey, or in this case now it's out of Orlando, then they'll send me an email and say XYZ, we're out of these 3 cases, or we're out of this. And then that's when I'll generate my actual invoices and then print them on Monday morning to give to the,
So they had already invoiced you, or you had already invoiced them when you get that on Friday?
no, I've already sent my purchase order off
Okay,
to them.
okay,
And so if there's any type of discrepancies on Wednesday or Thursday when they're pulling the information or pulling the product, then they'll let me know on Friday that that's what the case is.
and so when you go in to correct your invoice, do you actually amend or change the original invoice electronically so it won't reflect the original invoice?
You mean the PO?
Yes.
No, I don't change the PO.
Okay, well, then you mentioned an invoice, right?
Right,
Okay, is that your invoice or their?
my invoice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought you said you alter your invoice to reflect any shortages that the supplier would tell you about.
Correct. So these are the invoices going to the individual stores.
And so you had an original invoice, electronic.
I have a purchase order.
Well, then define for me the difference between your purchase order and your invoice.
So an invoice is what, or a purchase order, sorry, is what I generate to my individual suppliers. So on Mondays, I get a order from Total Wine for the following Monday. So I take that order and consolidate it down by each one of my 4 suppliers by my individual stores. I send that purchase order off to Deutsch, Park Street, Clay Street. They will then forward it to their warehouses. They all work out of central warehouses together, and that product is picked and put together. If during that picking process, they determine that there's a problem, that they're either short or something like this, they will notify me on Friday that XYZ is short on product for whichever store it may be. That's when I get ready to generate my invoices for the following Monday, is when I'll go through and make any changes off my original PO into the invoice.
Okay, so you don't modify your invoices, which I thought is what you said.
No, I don't modify my purchase orders.
And then your invoice goes out after you've already been notified by the supplier of any shortage.
No, on Fridays, when I get notified from my suppliers,
Mhm.
that's when I actually generate the invoices for the orders coming in on Monday. So if there's any type of breakage or anything like that on Monday, either through the trucking or through our negligence as far as unloading that, which does happen, then I'll make the adjustments on those particular invoices going to the stores.
And the invoices were originally generated by you electronically.
Yes, on Friday.
And then you said something about, excuse me, hand correcting them if there's breakages.
On Monday,
Okay.
Yeah.
So you hand correct paper copy.
correct. And then I'll go back and adjust the invoices that Monday as well, of any breakage or anything that's happened on the truck coming in or happened in my warehouse.
So do you now have 3, 4, 5 electronically generated documents, or has the original always been modified?
The original's always been modified.
And how do you receive the orders from the individual stores?
I receive them from Total Wine and Corporate. They're the ones that generate all the orders for all the stores. So for all their direct items, that's all done through the corporate office because of all the different systems that they have in place as far as usage, these type of things. Now, when I was delivering some things to the individual stores, I would receive those from Julie, the local contact here that works out of the Nora location. And she's the one that handles for the individual items in the individual stores.
Okay. You just said when you used to deliver to the individual stores?
When I used to sell some other products to the stores,
To Total Wine stores or others?
Total Wine stores.
What were those other products?
They were the Copper Mountain products, so Copper Still, Parlay Rum, items like that. But they have since chose and moved those over to Crossroads Vintners.
So you don't deal with Copper Mountain at all?
No, I still do as far as on outside the state of Indiana, but not in state of Indiana.
So then how does Total Wine pay the invoice?
So then the payment is done through an ACH into my account.
What is that?
Basically a bank transfer. Sorry.
And then how do they, is there an invoice number that they identify when they pay, or how do they match up the payment to the physical, maybe some handwriting on it invoice?
Those will be sent by the individual stores to the corporate office. And then they pay me in a lump sum payment for all five invoices.
I guess, do they identify at all the invoice number that they're paying, or?
On the ACH, there is reference to what the invoices are, I believe. I'd have to go back and look at my bank statements. I can't say for sure, because what shows up in my bank statement is one lump sum. And I verify that with what the lump sum is, because I keep track of weekly expenses and costs. So my invoices for my suppliers and everything. So each weekly, when I'm reconciling my checking account, making sure that these amounts match up. I can't say with certain if there's numbers, but there's invoice numbers on it, but I'm not sure if they're referencing those in the ACH.
So how do you track the payment days based on the credit terms in the statute?
I'm not sure if I'm following you. I'm sorry.
So for liquor, they have a certain number of days to pay. How do you track that to make sure they're compliant?
My agreement with them is they pay me within 24 hours of receiving the product.
What agreement?
Just our verbal agreement as far as how I get paid. So just like I have verbal agreements to pay my suppliers on a certain time, we don't have anything in writing as far as contracts or anything like that.
And why would that be that you don't have written contract?
I'm sorry.
Why is that you don't have written contract?
Traditionally, smaller suppliers or distributors do not have contracts with most of them. I can't think of when I was with Free Market Wine Group, we didn't have contracts with any of our suppliers. Obviously, nobody has contracts with retailers. But even at RNDC, the only contracts we had were with companies like Brown-Forman, Diageo, Moet Hennessy. None of the smaller suppliers, there were ever contracts written into place.
I guess that's why I'm asking, you say you have an agreement with Total. What all is included in this handshake unwritten agreement with Total Wine?
It's really just when it comes to payment, as far as when I get paid and then how quickly I pay my suppliers. And it's really just to keep accounting.
How quickly? you
No,
pay
no, no,
suppliers?
my discussions with my suppliers as far as how quickly I pay them. So I like to get paid within 24 hours. I like to pay the suppliers within 48 to 72 hours. And again, it keeps it clean for me. It's easy for me as far as accounting purposes. So
What's the due date on the invoice that you send?
the same date that the invoice is generated.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This process, I can't understand, I don't know that I heard, when you send out the purchase orders or when you get purchase orders to Friday when you prepare things, to Monday when you do things, and then the delivery. How often does that happen? Every week?
Every week.
Every week without fail, somebody needs delivery of something.
Yes, occasionally, I think so far in this year, there's been 1 week which probably was maybe the third week in January or maybe the first week in February. They didn't need any trucks to come through. Yeah, but otherwise it happens and it can be anywhere between 2 and 3 trucks every Monday morning.
What if you're on vacation?
I'm never on vacation on Mondays. So,
But other work has to happen, say Friday,
yeah,
so
I mean, work happens every day. I'm sorry,
how does that get done?
I just do it remotely on my computer. So, yeah,
Are you familiar with excise investigations that happened into Wabash Valley before it let its permit expire?
a little bit, yeah.
Are you familiar with violations that were issued?
No,
Do you have any information on why those violations remain unresolved?
remain unresolved?
Mm-hmm.
No, I do not.
So on the Copper Mountain product, I tried to review it and review everybody's testimony, and I think I'm still confused on who's paying what and doing what.
Right.
So I think we're all clear that Best manufactures.
They do all the bottling and labeling. So all the actual like distilling and everything is done by MGP or there's a company out of Marion, Indiana, and I can't remember. It's basically a natural grain producer, so vodka, things like that. But so it's either MGP, which is 95% of what Copper Mountain produces as far as bourbons and those type of things is bought from MGP.
So who buys it from MGP?
Copper Mountain does. They actually own the product that's
And
being
what
stored.
permit do they have to buy product from MGP?
That I don't know.
Okay, then,
I would assume, again, not speaking out of turn, I assume some sort of federal license because I know they've bought in barrels 5, 6 years ago over the years. So I don't know when was their last purchases, but that's all I know as far as the permit that they might have as far as federal.
so then the product is paid for by Copper Mountain, purchased from MGP. Who triggers it to go to Best?
Usually I will because I did it in the past. And so since Total Wine is buying that, I just continue that process. So kind of give you the idea of how it runs through. Deutsch will send me, as well as Copper Mountain, a PO of what they want to purchase of Copper Mountain products. Then I will communicate with Best and usually copy Copper Mountain and say, based on this order, we need 2 barrels of this or 3 barrels of that, 4 barrels that equate to how many cases that their PO is. And then Best will fulfill those, bottle those, label those.
But you're triggering it to move from MGP to Best.
In the past, sometimes not. At this point, I am now because basically classic transportation and everything going away. So I've now, after some clarification from excise with my legal counsel, understand that because of my license, I can haul alcoholic products as well from suppliers and things like that. So I rent trucks from Penske there on 25th Street and pay Larry, who works for me part-times on Mondays to help unload the trucks. We'll go down to MGP, move the product to Best, or if Best has product ready to be picked up, he'll go down, pick it up, and bring it back up to my location.
Does your permit authorize you to deliver to a manufacturer?
That I don't know. And I don't believe Best is listed as a manufacturer, but I could be wrong. From what I understood is moving the product from MGP to Best Vineyards to be bottled was within the scope of my permits.
So who owns the product while you're transporting it from MGP to Best?
I would assume Copper Mountain does.
And then when it gets to Best, who owns the product?
You mean while it's still being bottled and everything? Or once it leaves Best?
Well, it's at Best.
Again, I would assume Copper Mountain does.
And then who paid Best for their work?
I do.
And then what does Best do with it after they're done bottling and labeling?
Then it's shipped to me.
And is that automatic when they're done, or do you trigger that shipment in some way?
No, he'll notify me that this is ready to be picked up. And then I'll rent a truck and have Larry go down and pick it up and bring it up to my location.
And then who owns the product while it's at your location?
I do. And so that's the way after there's some, I think, confusion, I should say, as far as last with Wilbert and everybody testifying. So basically the process, maybe this will help a little bit. So I trigger it to be made and everything like this. Or bottled, if you will, not made, because it's already been purchased. Once it's ready, I'll bring it up to my location. It will sit there. In the past, what we've done is we would charge Copper Mountain, basically sell that to Copper Mountain. And I would charge a $3 storage fee for it to be stored at my facility, which is how we've done it since day one. And I was under the impression, again, speaking with the gentleman with excise that came in several times, as well as through legal counsel, that was legal to do that. We have now since looked to change it to, I will pay Best Vineyards for the production and everything, and it will come to my location, and I will bill Deutsch for the product, and then Best and Copper Mountain will have a licensing agreement so that Best will then pay Copper Mountain whatever is due to them.
So the product is initially paid for by Copper Mountain. So not services, but the product.
Yes,
You're never paying for the product.
I'm paying, I guess, for the bottling and labeling and all that, what Wilbur does.
Services.
Yes,
But the product from MGP is paid for by Copper Mountain.
correct. Yes,
And then you only pay for services
correct.
by Best.
Right,
Then it comes to your location to sit.
correct.
And then how does Deutsch then get involved in a payment, and who are they paying?
So in the past, they would pay Copper Mountain directly.
Okay,
And we've changed that now that I invoice Deutsch and Deutsch pays me. And that's why this whole process of, in the past, I was charging Copper Mountain the fees to have it bottled and all that. And so now we've changed that. And so I'll be paying Wilbert the full amount of the product and everything like this. And then him and Copper Mountain will have a separate, that I'll have nothing to do with. There'll be an arrangement between them.
so Best will be selling you product they don't own.
I believe, I'm not sure how that's gonna work. Still, we've got to figure out the nuances of it. But I don't know if he's going to buy that product from, because Wilbert has bought product from Copper Mountain before. And I'm not sure if that's their movement going forward, exactly how it's gonna work. I'm not sure. I'm not part of all that. discussion, but that's what was discussed as far as making it the best and easiest way.
Okay, so then Deutsch pays you the full sum of an invoice. And then what do you do with it?
I would subtract out whatever fees that were owed that I paid to Wilbert or anything else related to that bottling, labeling process. And then the rest would eventually get paid to Copper Mountain as kind of a licensing agreement. So
then what happens to the product? It's been in your warehouse. Now Deutsch puts in a purchase order, or how does that?
yeah, they've already put in a purchase order. And that's what they send one to Copper Mountain, one to me. That's what triggers the Wilbert to make it. I'll reach out to Wilbert either through email or through text and say, this is what I need prepared. Then once, and they usually put a date like a month in advance. So they'll say, I want to pick up on January 5th or whatever. Then I will get a bill of lading from C.H. Robinson saying, we're picking up this order on this date. Here's the bill of lading. Please provide this to the driver that comes and picks up the order.
Do you know where it goes from there?
It either goes to New Jersey or it goes to Orlando, to one of their two central locations, warehouses that they have.
And then, and this is if you know, because I know this is asking about a process now we're out of state. What do they do with it then?
The only thing I can assume is that, so again, they have warehouses where they store all their different products. Western Carriers is the main one out in New Jersey. Both Deutsch, Park, Clay Street, they all have space there at the warehouse. And so I would assume it gets put into whatever area Deutsch's has there. As far as Orlando, I'm not sure of the process in Orlando. So
If you know, again, if you know, does any of that product come back from Orlando, New Jersey to Indiana?
no,
Does that mean you don't know or it doesn't?
as far as I know, it does not. No. It does, well, let me clear, it doesn't come through me. So it's not one of the things that I received from Orlando.
I guess you would know that if it
Yeah.
came through you.
Yeah.
Who, if anyone, pays taxes on that product while it's moving through that process?
The excise tax will be paid by Wilbert.
The state or federal, sorry.
Federal, I'm sorry, federal tax is paid by Wilbert. And then I would log that, what I received from Wilbert into InTime, log the invoice and everything, how many gallons I received. And then if it's going out of state, I would log that as being tax exempt, the amount of gallons that are being shipped out of state. Now, in the past, when I was selling those particular items to the individual Total Wines, I was the one paying excise tax on that here in the state of Indiana.
How long about did it stay at your warehouse before it gets picked up by C.H. Robinson?
Usually usually about 2 weeks, but there's always some extra product there. Because let's say, Deutsch wants 80 cases, that would be a little over 2 barrel or a little under 2 barrels. So maybe out of those 2 barrels would be 90 cases made. So there'd probably be roughly 10 cases or so left over that would still be in my warehouse out of those 80 that were shipped.
Any other questions on the Copper Mountain product?
No, not at this time.
Just a minute.
Can I ask a question or read?
No.
Sorry.
Nothing further this time.
On some of the wholesale, I would ask that the witness be allowed to testify from what he knows or doesn't know, and, if he needs a recess to speak to counsel, he needs to ask for that. So on just some general wholesale practices, at the Total Wine stores, are there displays or advertising for the products from Park Street Deutsch? Any of your suppliers?
Not that I know of, not to my ability, but I'm not sure.
Do you provide any product for consumer product sampling at the locations?
No,
Does consumer product sampling happen?
I know it happens, but I don't know about the products that I actually sell through. Because I know their policy is that they have to be purchased from the individual stores to be sampled.
If you don't know, that's fine. Do you do any product management at any retailer dealer location?
No,
Do you handle any consumer advertising specialties that go through a retailer dealer location?
no,
Do you do any contest or promotions on any of the products through a retailer dealer location?
no,
What was the nature of the communication with Indiana Beverage, the wholesaler up north, on the similar name?
I got a cease and desist letter from an attorney. And that's why the name changed. So they basically asked me to change the name or to get sued, so.
Around when did that happen?
Probably about 3 to 4 months after starting business. So I could pull the record, I still have the documentation that I was sent by FedEx. So,
That was the extent of that conversation,
Yeah.
or the communication with Indiana Beverage.
right,
How do you handle new products produced by the primary source?
I will get so each month I will get a product book from each one of my suppliers. If there's anything new, it'll be highlighted. So I'll take all that, enter it into my system. That's when I create my product book, pricing sheet that's sent off to them as far as notifying them of new product that's being put into play.
To whom is that sent?
To Total Wine.
Do they ever ask follow-up questions on any of the new products,
Such as,
sampling, what it is, who manufactured it, anything like that?
no,
Do they just start ordering it once it hits the price sheet?
if they're interested, yes, but usually it's always ordered.
Usually it's always what?
Ordered,
Ordered?
Yeah.
What happens if Total Wine needs additional product between deliveries?
I don't keep any in the warehouse, so they will have to wait till the following Monday.
Do they ever make that request?
No,
Does Clay Street import beer?
that I don't know.
So if they listed you as their wholesaler and said that they were importing beer, you wouldn't have any information on that?
No, because I don't know all the items that my suppliers import.
Do you know who else your suppliers are importing to? Are there other, I guess, let me back up. Are there other wholesalers, if you know, that your suppliers import to
In other states or,
in Indiana?
I believe they do with RNDC. I believe Deutsch sells products, or they used to.
Who is, so I will clarify, last time I asked who Vethos LLC was, and it was a primary source listed with D&E Spirits as the wholesaler. For the record, that is a beer manufacturer who was attempting to list their wholesaler as Indiana Beverage before the name change. So it got linked to the wrong permit because of the name confusion. So just to clarify, last time I asked about Zethos, I believe you said I have no idea who that is. So there's clarification on why.
And
Along the same lines with associated permit, do you know Jacob Early?
Yes,
Is that your salesman?
he was originally working as a salesman selling into Total Wine, and then also helping me on Monday to unload the trucks and reload them. But he's no longer with me.
What was his role making the sales to Total Wine?
Really just going in and talking to the individual stores and then working with Julie if they need a product of the Copper Mountain items. And then again, like I said, helping me on Mondays to unload and reload the trucks.
Any other questions? I'm gonna review my list here, but
I have a question going back to, and this goes back, I apologize, to some extent to your testimony the previous day.
Mhm.
Can you run through again the process of a semi pulls up, assuming it's a semi,
Yes.
the semi pulls up, how do you know when they're coming, when they're gonna get there, how are you notified of that?
So typically it's typically every Monday morning, like I said. I'm usually at the store or the warehouse at 7:15 every morning, because typically they're coming, before when they were coming out of New Jersey, they would come in, drive on Friday after they got loaded Saturday, and would be waiting on here usually Sunday afternoon. So by Monday morning, they were already here at the warehouse, ready to be unloaded. So they traditionally have always been around between 7:30 and 9:30 when they arrive. Case in point today, I had to go this morning to unload one of the trucks before I came here.
On
So,
Tuesday?
well, because it got delayed, so it didn't get loaded. So I got a notification that the truck was going to be delayed a day by the trucking company saying, hey, he didn't get loaded on time. He was out of hours, so he'll be there on Tuesday morning. So I went to the warehouse this morning before I came here and unloaded him and reloaded and got him through.
So you, in a nutshell, you unload and reload the same truck,
Correct.
okay? And I believe last time you said you can unload and reload it in minutes?
Anywhere between, let's say, 20 and 30 minutes, depending on the size of the load. But again, like I said, I have another gentleman that helps me. So you know.
And so you pull off a pallet, what happens next?
We just continue to pull off the pallets, make sure that they're organized by the individual stores. Once that has been completely unloaded, we check all the paperwork with what the driver's given us. I then proceed to take a picture of the empty truck. And then we reload that truck based on the stops and then give him the paperwork, the invoices, and he takes it.
So what's the purpose of taking the picture of an empty?
Because I was accused of not doing that I wasn't unloading and letting the items come to rest. So I produced videos as well as, so every truck since the second month that we've been open, I've taken a picture of empty truck to make sure it has a timestamp and the trailer tags to verify that it was completely unloaded.
So, in your opinion, unloading them, setting them down on the concrete, empty truck, that means they've come to rest in your warehouse. And 99% of the time, then they're immediately put back on the truck and shipped out.
Correct,
Same carrier.
correct.
I believe last time you said something about you hired Trans Am trucking.
Trans Am is the one that is traditionally the one that's being used by the trucking company that I use. So I use a third-party broker who brokers the freight for me. So,
Okay.
yeah, so,
Remind me who that was.
it's C.H. Robinson's the main one, but then there's also Ardbridge as well as the other company.
And so you're paying for the transportation from either New Jersey or Orlando to your warehouse.
Yes, which is included on the price and being delivered to the stores as well.
And how do you, when you said you make sure those pallets are broken down into individual stores, correctly? Correct?
I don't break them down now. They're shipped in by the individual stores.
Right.
Yeah.
But phraseology was bad, sorry. But you try to verify that they're separated into stores?
Yeah, so each pallet will have what's on the pallet and then what store it's going to. So let's say there's 2 trucks that come in. There'll be 3 stores maybe on one truck and 2 stores in another truck. So again, I want to make sure that those are loaded in such a way that each pallet is going to the right individual stores based on what's labeled on those particular labels or particular pallets, excuse me.
So you're making sure basically they're in the right order in the truck, so
Yeah.
the first store that's
Yeah.
fresh out, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, there's no real inventory of those pallets. You just look at what sheet of paper that's on the, I assume plastic wrap?
Yeah.
Whatever you call that.
Yeah.
Looks like giant saran wrap.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a bill of lading on each one of those.
There's a bulk lading overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also a paper on each pallet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I assume you accept that as true unless there's liquor pouring out of those.
Right, yeah, yeah, because all the trucks are locked and sealed once they leave. So if that seal's taken off, then I know that I'm not accepting that truck. It will have to be returned.
And then do you personally seal the truck when it leaves?
Yes,
Thank you.
sure.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I wasn't here for the
That's okay.
first meeting, but I did go back and listen to the hearing. And I thought at that time that you stated that you were the only one who was unloading and reloading the truck.
No, I do it personally myself, but I also do have a helper that does it as well. Yeah. So if you see the videos, you'll see that I did a video where it was strictly by myself unloading them. And then I did a video where one of the gentlemen was helping me. So, yeah.
And the video is a full unloading and reloading of the truck,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's timed.
Yes, ma'am.
And how long did that take?
Myself was approximately 44 minutes. And I believe with the 2 of us, it was 22, 23 minutes.
Those are all hand pallet jet.
No, they're electric.
As I meant to, but you're manually hauling them or you got a forklift in there?
No, they're electric.
Okay,
So it's not like the ones you have to pump and then pull yourself.
okay.
These are, electric.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when the product comes to you, it is federal tax paid
I would assume so.
out of bond.
I would assume so. Can't speak for sure.
do you receive any additional revenue? So you get paid your invoice amounts from Total Line. And you get paid on the Copper Mountain by Deutsch. Do you receive any additional revenue other than the payments from Total Line and the payments from Deutsch?
No.
Thought there had been some storage fee from Copper Mountain that you received.
That's, yeah, I thought that's what she was talking about. I apologize if it's not what you're.
Well,
So-
you said you were moving away from the storage fee.
Well, originally I was gonna move away from dealing with them. But again, it's a nice little bit of revenue to help offset some of the costs, so we've not done that. And again, I was under the impression from conversations that that was legal for me to continue to do. From the very beginning, then again, a year ago, when we had the investigation the first time, so.
You expand upon that? Why do you assume that's legal?
Because I know you can do it for beer, and so I have had conversations with the excise officers that came in and explained to them the process of me charging them a storage fee. And never was I corrected or said, no, you can't do this, or in the last year ago, there was never anything that was brought up as far as the investigation or any of those type of things. So, and then speaking with my counsel as well, we were under the impression that this was.
This was what?
That the storage fees were illegal.
Okay.
Are you familiar with where to find our statutes and regulations?
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to be clear on one thing. Probably feel like you're getting beat over the head with this question.
That's okay.
So, fair statement that you refuse to do business with anybody other than Total One.
I don't know if I would say refuse. Right now, I'm just not ready to grow. So as I stated last time, and look, if I may, to kind of clarify that point. So John Cinder got up and said he couldn't understand financially how I could do things, how I could make a living and everything. In all due respect, I don't believe John's ever owned a distributorship, just as though I've never owned a liquor store. So I don't know the nuances. I don't know what kind of money you make or anything like that. And so I've been in the business world in this state for 30 years. I've owned liquor licenses for restaurants. I've built restaurants from the ground up. I've worked 80-hour work weeks and killed myself to do it. I sacrificed time with my family, sacrificed time being with friends. A year and a half ago, I had a heart issue and had to have a procedure. I'm just not ready to go back to work in 80-hour work weeks.
Okay,
I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I like it. It keeps me busy, but I want to spend time with my daughter. I want to spend time with my family. I don't know how much longer I've got here, so I want to try to do all those type of things. So yes, I guess you could say I don't want to do more because it's going to take, if I add 10 more customers on, it's going to add 10 times more. And I run into the risk of, what if this customer doesn't buy on a regular basis? And now I've hired more employees. Now I've hired trucks. And now I go bankrupt. And right now, no, there's no guarantee any of this could fall through. I could lose Total Wine as a customer and I'd be out. But there's a lot of things. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
not really.
Okay.
I mean, you gave me an explanation, and I understood your explanation last time is you don't want. But as I understand it, bottom line is you refuse to do business with anybody other than Total One. You may have your reasons, and I may or may not believe what you're telling me. But my question is, are you refusing to do business with anybody other than Total One?
I guess if that's how you want to word it, yes.
Okay, well, other businesses have reached out to you and asked for price sheets and offered to buy quantities from you, and you either, as I understand, you ghost, you haven't even responded. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I have.
Anything else?
I don't.
All right. I think that's all.
Okay.
Is there, I should ask this, because I asked this of other witnesses, is there anything else you want to tell us today about your business, your process, your procedures?
No, I think I've explained exactly how our procedures work, which I believe, and talking to council, was within exactly how we need to do it. And we've asked a lot of questions from a lot of different members of ATC and excise, and I think we've done everything that we've been asked to do. So,
Well, let me follow up with a question. You refuse to do business with anybody else but Total Wine, correct?
correct.
When others contact you, why don't you call them and say, we're not doing business? We won't work with you. At least I understood previously, people say you just never got back.
No, I haven't. So,
Is there a reason? I mean, that's like good business sense, so they don't keep contacting you.
no, just no particular reason.
I don't think I have anything further.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have Officer Strauss here. He was involved in preparing some of the incident report forms that we have in our files. If the commission wishes, we can call Officer Strauss and have him walk us through some of the investigations and what he observed. I think that'd be great. All right. Officer? Have to take your ROs before you sit down. You solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that the testimony you're about to give the commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right. I guess first we'll start with some background. How are you employed?
I am a officer under trade practice investigations with Indiana State Excise Police. Been there for just over 17 years now.
Do we ever say his name?
Yes. I started too far in. Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
I can. My name is Chris Strauss and last name is Strouse.
And what types of things do you do as a trade practice officer with Indiana State Excise Police?
Investigations involving manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, dealers, basically all levels of permit holders.
And did there come a time that you were asked to conduct an investigation into a company called Wabash Valley?
I believe the original investigation was assigned to Officer Kreider, but I was assisting in that investigation, yes.
I guess before I get too deep into that, are you familiar with the investigation, or would that be better answered by Officer Kreider?
I am I'm somewhat familiar with the investigation, yes.
Okay. What did you find during the course of that investigation?
Kind of similar to what's going on here. It was a small wholesaler owned by Robert Kersey. The floor space of that location was extremely small. I can't remember the exact square footage of it, but small enough to where I don't believe you could probably unload a full semi out of it. And they were, I believe, had the contract at that time with Total Wine.
So if you know, we've heard a lot about contracts and no contracts. Was there a contract at that time that you saw
Between,
between Total Wine and Wabash Valley?
no,
Not that you are aware of?
not that I can
Okay.
familiar with, no.
Did anything else Did you become aware of anything else during the investigation at Wabash Valley?
It was in the same facility in a different suite as Rhodes Beverage, which was owned by Lance Rhodes. Dale Stewart was a salesman at that time for Wabash Valley. And his office was located within Rhodes Beverage, which is an adjoining suite at that time.
Were those issues addressed during the course of that investigation?
Yeah, there was violations issued to Rhodes and Wabash Valley.
While it was still located at that location, was there any shift in how they were operating during that time?
Wabash Valley or or either Rhodes Beverage?
I guess just generally, were there any, like, what was done to correct the violation is more what I'm asking, if you know and remember.
They, shortly after the violations, I don't remember the exact date of those violations or reports, but shortly after that's when Dale went out and started his his wholesaler at that point.
Okay,
Once it closed, it was around the same time, it seems like, that their business went out, that Dale's business started.
when you say it closed, are you talking about Wabash Valley?
Wabash and I believe Rhodes all was at the same time.
Okay. If you know, who did the final inspection on the new warehouse for what is now D&E Spirits?
I believe Officer Kreider did the final. I believe it was after it had already been approved. It may have went active prior to the final inspection even.
Okay. So when did you were you assigned a complaint on D&E Spirits at any point?
Again, the initial complaint, I'm not sure who it was assigned to. I don't recall if it was myself or Kreider.
Okay. But you and Officer Kreider began an investigation.
Correct.
And what was the nature of the complaint and the investigation?
I do not recall the initial investigation. My most recent recollection would have been this year of 2024.
Okay. What were you investigating in 2024? We'll start there.
Looking into the business practices of how they're operating, continuing to operate.
And approximately when did that start?
I would say probably first quarter of the year of 2024 is when we started investigating it again or looking into their business practices. There was an original complaint, but I do not remember when that was previously. 2022 maybe, but I don't recall.
And what did you find when you did the investigation in 2024?
2024, Dale is operating a wholesaler at the address that we've described. I think 8322 is a physical address. There's two components to this, I guess. One being the Copper Mountain products that he's basically warehousing in his facility. And the other part is he is bringing Total Wine products in from New Jersey, or now, as he said, Florida. So in the course of the investigation, we started in July, I think was the first contact I had with a truck. Went up there early in the morning. There were trucks waiting. Pretty much what Dale described is fairly correct. I mean, the trucks were waiting on him. He showed up, unloads a truck, reloads a truck, switches the seal on it, goes off to a Total Wine store. Watched those trucks go to the Total Wine. We followed Lieutenant Stewart, Officer Kreider, and we followed different trucks to stores. They are going to Total Wine stores. The one time that we went into the wholesaler, which was, I believe, July 22nd, of 2024, Officer Kreider, Lieutenant Stewart, and I went in. Dale was inside. We watched the truck back up. We watched Dale arrive at the location. Went in, identified ourselves to him. Dale had his invoices that he carried in, that he told us he prints typically on Wednesday or Thursday the day before. He had 2 trucks there that day. Both trucks were loaded with 5 stores. I believe 3 stores were on one truck, 2 stores were on the other truck. I did watch Dale. I know that's come up several times. I watched Dale unload the truck by himself. It's a motorized, self-propelled pallet jack, essentially, that he unloads the truck with. It was 18 minutes off, 18 minutes on. He unloads the product from the truck. It is already wrapped in shrink wrap, or I'm not sure the correct terminology for it, but it has a Western Carriers 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. At the top, it says Western Carriers on it. At the bottom, it says D&E Spirits. It shows how many cases are on that pallet. Unloads them, loads the exact same stuff on there. Driver pulls away, goes out and red tags it. Hands the driver the invoices that he had printed off at home, I believe he told me the day. So that's pretty much how the operation of the trucks is working.
When you say red tags it, what does that mean?
It's a security seal that you would see on the back of the truck. So that way, when the truck driver gets to the store, as long as that seal's intact, nobody's been in the truck or messed with anything in there.
Okay, you were about to say something else before I interrupted. What happened?
So there was nothing else Total Wine related that I'm aware of or in that warehouse. It's just empty floor space with Copper Mountain products, which I believe he's described. There's actually a entry lobby in the front of the place, and then there's an office in there. The entry area there's no furniture or anything. If you were to come in the front door, there's no furniture. It's just a bare empty room. The office area, there's really nothing in, since I believe some of the paperwork was 2022 dated in there. No computers, no phones, no printers. I believe there's maybe an old laptop in one corner I saw in a bag, but no office equipment in there. And as I said, that he brought in from his car, he brought in the paperwork and the invoices for all 5 stores already printed, prior to those trucks backing into his facility and unloading.
Any questions?
Did you happen to notice if the truck, the semi tractor trailers, were they licensed, what state were they licensed in? And what
Yes, so
authorized carriers in Indiana for alcohol?
Pride Trucking was the name of the trucks, and I did remember them from previous. Now that I'm going through this a little bit, 2022, I believe, is the last time we dealt with Dale in D&E Spirits. But Pride Trucking was the trucking company then, I believe, as well. They did both trucks. They were the same 2 trucks I saw multiple weeks in a row, and they are listed as carriers. So they are legit carriers at this point. I think he made reference to a new company bringing it now, and I am not familiar with them.
are you familiar with anything on the invoicing and purchase orders between primary source, wholesaler, and Total Wine as it relates to everything, but we'll talk about Copper Mountain separate, but everything but Copper Mountain, are you familiar with the invoice and purchase order process?
The only thing I'm familiar with is that he had the sheets with him when he came in that day, with already 4 Total Wine to hand to the truck driver. And he had one printed off for each individual store, 5 stores that day. As far as how the orders come into him and that kind of thing, no, I'm not familiar with that.
Moving on to the, Copper Mountain. Are you familiar at all with how the Copper Mountain product moves through what would hopefully be a 3-tier system?
Yeah, so Copper Mountain Beverage, from my latest look at them, is I'm not sure that they hold any federal permits at this point. I know Lance mentioned that they're out of Washington State. I've contacted the Secretary of State in Washington State. They are a registered company in Washington State. However, they don't have any liquor endorsements or alcoholic beverage endorsements out of Washington State. In Indiana, they held 2 separate primary sources, which I'm not sure what that's quite about, but both of those have expired. The most recent one expired in December of 2022. So Copper Mountain does have product that they own, barrels of whiskey at MGP in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. MGP, if you're not familiar, is probably the largest or one of the largest distilleries in the country. Last inventory I had on them was a little over 500 barrels that Copper Mountain owned. Basically, the way I understand it to work is when Copper Mountain needs barrels, they call MGP. MGP arranges transportation, or they allow that somebody with a representative with Copper Mountain to come pick it up. I think I've seen from those invoices, the barrel request forms were done by Dale and one of the Rhodes. I'm not really familiar which one it was, either Chance or Lance, which is father son. That was the 2 barrel request forms I have. So once they make the request for the barrels, they arrange their own transportation and take them to Wilbert Best. Wilbert Best is a manufacturer. He has a farm winery as well as a distillery and a artisan distillery permit is what he holds with Indiana. He has a bottling line there. From what I understand from talking to Wilbert and Lance in the past, is all the product is paid for. Sorry, not the product. All the bottles, the labels, the caps are all paid for and sent to Wilbert from Copper Mountain. They take the orders, Wilbert does. He bottles it, labels it, boxes it up, and then it ends up going to D&E Spirits. Wilbert does bill D&E Spirits, and Wilbert also, which I haven't checked, but he does list that he pays the federal excise tax on that. Once D&E Spirits gets the product of the day that it's invoiced from Best Vineyards, in the invoices that I have, it gets immediately billed to Copper Mountain Beverage from D&E Spirits on the same day. And maybe that's changed now since he's changed his process, but.
So when it gets invoiced from Best to D&E Spirits, is the invoice just for services?
I would have, one invoice I have written down here was for 80 cases of 90% rye copper still whiskey and 80 cases of 21% rye copper still whiskey. There was two separate invoices and they were $2,133.44 each for 80 cases of liquor. And the way I understand it, and he's made the comment, Dale has, that he charges them $3 per case. The invoice totals that I have was invoice 2632 and 2631. They were 2133.44 each, which comes to $4,266.88. D&E then immediately bills Copper Mountain Beverage the same day, same invoice date, and the total that he billed them was $4,747.20. So it's additional $480.32, which equals $3 per case.
So is the product? I don't even know how to ask this question. The product is billed to Copper Mountain, but remains in the warehouse?
Correct. The product is in the warehouse, but it is billed the same day that Best bills him. Where it's at in the transition as far as transportation to him or whatnot, I'm not sure, but yes, the product, the copper still product is in his warehouse, D&E Spirits.
You know what happens with the Copper Mountain product from there leaving D&E Spirits?
The only thing I know for sure that I have witnessed is that Crossroads is another wholesaler, liquor wholesaler in Indiana. Crossroads places orders for it from Copper Mountain. They go to D&E and pick up the product and take it to Crossroads.
Sorry, would you say that again?
Crossroads, and I apologize, I don't know Crossroads, there's more to the name than that, but Crossroads, Bill Kennedy's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's been mentioned
Okay.
earlier, but you were gonna say the owner's name to give it more context.
So Crossroad, Vintners, I think it is actually, they're a liquor wholesaler in Indiana. They place product orders, to Copper Mountain, which Dale is also actually included in, the emails on that, with a Copper Mountain Beverage email address. But they go to D&E Spirits, Dale's facility, Crossroads does, and picks up the Copper Mountain product from Dale and then returns it to Crossroads. The owner over there says he emails. He sends a check to Copper Mountain to a P.O. box. Is how he pays for the product.
Where's the PO?
Plainfield, Indiana, which is the same P.O. box that I think Copper Mountain's held for several years.
Have any of these other permits that were in Plainfield, Indiana, used that same P.O. box?
I think it was under Rhodes Beverage as well, P.O. box. I think it's 717 if I remember correctly.
Through your other work with wholesalers, have you ever known a wholesaler to use an email account from their primary source?
Not that I've run into, no.
Anything else so far on that?
That's an
I have anything further at this time.
I had spending enough, I think.
Yeah, I think we may have more questions for you as our trade practice expert. I do have one. Were you in meetings with Prosecutor Harrison and Dale Stewart?
Yes, and we just looked up the date because I could not remember when it is. I think it was in January of 2021 is when that meeting at some point. And it was held here. And I want to say Josh Harrison, Lieutenant Stewart, Officer Kreider, Jeff McKean, and maybe Rothenberg, along with Dale Stewart was here. And that was in reference to Wabash Valley, I believe at that time.
So Dale Stewart was here on the Wabash Valley matter.
Correct. We requested, Bob Kersey to be here as well, but he was not here.
At that time, did you see Josh Harrison give legal advice to Dale Stewart, Wabash Valley, on how he should set up his business?
No.
Did you hear a conversation among any of those individuals, excuse me, in which Prosecutor Harrison may not have told them how to set up a business, but may have authorized a business model?
No.
Was there discussion at that time of the violations that had been observed with Wabash Valley?
The main thing I remember taking away from that meeting is he was trying to ask questions to understand how they were operating, and his counsel would not allow him to answer the questions.
Who was asking the questions?
Harrison, Prosecutor Harrison.
But the representative present for that meeting for Wabash Valley was Dale Stewart.
Correct.
How did he describe his authority to be there for Wabash Valley?
I think he was a salesman for Wabash Valley.
But somebody from Wabash Valley was requested to be there.
Correct. Typically, when we dealt or had questions, it was Dale. I don't know as I ever even talked to Bob Kersey the entire investigation. I'm not sure if Officer Kreider did or not, but I never had any dealings with him.
Okay, anything else? Do we? Do we want to? So the ultimate matter before us that brought us to the investigatory hearing was we have someone raising issues or concerns with the renewal of D&E Spirits permit. They're currently on an extension, so the ultimate issue is, do we renew the permit or through the process of wholesaler permits, issue what we refer to as a notice of intent to deny? So that's the ultimate question for us to look at. Do we want to schedule a follow-up time for hearing or just review the information we have and then set a time for consideration at a later date?
I'd be inclined, to go back and look at everything again. It is a little complicated. There's a bunch of different parties that have changed names and, be inclined to go back and look at more detail and then just later decide how we're going to proceed.
I'm in favor of, setting a date, if we can. And if we aren't in a position to set a date, vocalize our intent to set a date. My theory of practice sort of is I don't want to lose track of something, and I want to keep my feet to the fire as well as everybody else, especially if they've got a question of renewal burning. To be fair to them as well, I think we need to,
And if we
don't need the hearing, then we vacate.
if we set a date now, I don't think the subpoena would still apply unless we re-up it for some reason for additional questions, but you likely would want to have it at a time that you're available.
May I ask a question? What is the current status of their D&E's operation? They're under an extension,
So they're expired on an extension.
okay, and do we know when that extension is to?
Mr. Stewart, do you know when you're,
I do not, I know it's been a couple of times.
Mr. Endermill?
Yeah, I don't know specifically, but I know that
Isn't that
That
a
letter of
question? I mean, what if it expires tomorrow?
it doesn't expire tomorrow.
Okay, so you know when it doesn't, but you don't know when it does.
I just don't want to venture a guess. I mean,
Okay, I
I can
understand.
pull it up.
But what, my point is, what is the pressingness of that extension?
Officer, do you know?
When they expire now, I don't.
Okay.
I can look it up.
If you could, that'd be great. Thank you.
We have a few, I don't have my laptop, so I can't access on my phone. I think we have some options here. We can review it and set it, but if we look at 2 weeks, 30 days, we're right at the holidays.
Right.
So it might not be a question of when the extension expires, but what are we willing to do with the extension to avoid a hearing on, December 24th? So that's as much a question for the commission as it is for when it expires.
I would be in favor of an extension to get them through, or if we're setting the next hearing date, it definitely get them
Is it
through. the
100
hearing.
experience and then D&E?
So you're worried about the hearing date, not the extension date. So,
No, I'm worried
Okay.
about the extension of it. Get them to the next hearing date to be decide at that hearing that we will shoot.
So they show stuff, one permit expired yesterday.
But let's find out when it expires.
It sounds like there's a,
Do you have it? McKean's looking online. So you said one of the permits expired yesterday. The other shows 9/30/24. I know we've had letters of authority that have been going back. Jeff's been working on that.
well, I
We also
think
had the incident with the truck that backed into and rendered spiritual. Yes. I think there's a letter of authority that's there, so it may not show up online.
it would show up online if there's a letter of authority.
Do we want to take, if we're gonna set a hearing date, we want to pick that hearing date and then if extensions are needed, grant them until that extension date?
Yeah, but we don't even have an extension request at this point for a permit that apparently expired yesterday.
Well,
So
maybe we get those.
I think
We can.
we can pick our hearing date and then we have a meeting next Tuesday. We'll address whatever we've received at that time. But obviously that's an operational issue on the extension.
if something expired yesterday, does that mean they can't do anything today?
That would be what it means.
That would be correct.
How could that happen?
Sorry.
Mr. Stewart, do you know?
Well, I was under the assumption because of all the issues that we've had as far as hearings and everything, that we had a letter of authority. I could be
Yeah.
incorrect.
That's what Jeff's recollection is as well. He's on, I mean, I think he's online. If he can patch in or not.
Because we did have to move warehouses at one time because one of the semis smashed into our wall and they had to tear it down and replace it, so we had to get a letter to authorize that or operate out of another warehouse just down the road, so.
But that, you're back in your original warehouse now?
Yeah.
So the letter of authority for the other location would have nothing to do with,
Right, but I thought I was under the understanding that there was a letter of authority to continue to operate until this matter was resolved.
is that hanging at your location?
I believe so, yes. But like I said, I want to refer back to Jeff and Alex before I can speak out of turn.
Okay, well, as the permit holder, it would be very important that you maintain a copy of your permit or authority to operate at your location and be aware of what those dates are. We'll check our records as well. But if you have a letter of authority extending beyond yesterday, follow up with us on that and we'll make sure that our records reflect that.
It sounds like we need to check the address and make sure that the address record is correct.
Well, so the address in Emla was correct. There was a letter of authority temporarily allowing a separate location, but we did not change the address of record.
Okay, got it.
So I guess back to what we can do today. Do we want to select a time for a follow-up hearing?
Yes.
Let's see anything.
Looking at calendars. Next week is Thanksgiving and escrow, so we may not get a ton reviewed next week.
Let's see.
If we're looking in December, we don't have a commission meeting or other meeting the week of December 9th. And then we're either in a commission meeting week or holiday week, every other week of December. Do we want to try to put it in December or try to look at January?
I say we said afternoon of the 10th of December. And if we need to move it or vacate it, we can.
Sounds fine.
That works for me. That gives us the week of the 2nd, but it's not a holiday week, not a, they did the commission week, but
10th of December afternoon,
Yeah,
yeah, does
that's
that,
the ATC auction.
thank you for keeping up. I'm looking at my,
I'll be there for a couple of times. I can figure that out. but maybe-
December the 17th.
that's commission meeting day, but we could do it in the afternoon like we did on this one.
1 o'clock.
that's okay with me.
17th, and then if you don't need it for some reason, we will notify everyone on that.
And Mr. Stewart, you're under a continuing obligation to appear. You understand that? Okay.
I hate to harp on this. Today or certainly tomorrow, someone doesn't have a permit to do business, correct?
We're looking at it. I've been texting with Jeff and there's been communications with Chris and Ashley. I haven't been point on those pieces. So,
Need to get with Jim.
yeah, we will follow up and make
2:30,
sure.
can you get back to the office and file something today? So she can run on that today and you can have authority to work
Yes.
tomorrow?
I mean,
It's
it's a subsequent extension. I mean, if they don't get it today, they can't. So it sounds like it's one permit, not the other. I don't know if it's the wine or the liquor.
But we need to take care of it.
Yeah,
Can you clean that up?
Yes.
Thank you.
so until they have authorization from us, they would be prohibited from wholesaling either the liquor or the wine, whichever one it is. So that would be where things stand. If they come back today and I'm available, but so. It's also a subsequent extension request, which should make it part of the commission review. So I guess, are you making a motion that contingent on receiving something, we issue it, or?
I was going to suggest, we don't have anything before us. I was going to suggest that we just agree that we will favorably consider an executive, action on whatever you file, since we don't know what it is, right?
Or
I would do it as a letter of authority.
Letter of authority, executive letter. of
Till
authority.
next meeting.
until next Tuesday, or,
Yes.
okay.
Is that agreement?
Go ahead.
That might consent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so I'm clear, what we're asking for, because I can do either or both. Request today for a letter of authority to continue operating, and then a subsequent request for an extension. We would ask that the fee would be waived since this is part of the commission investigatory hearing, the reason why the renewal hasn't been processed. We'll file that as well. So two things that you were expecting from me or McKean, we'll get it to you.
Or four, because you don't know when the other one expires. So I don't know,
Oh, I was gonna consolidate, but yes.
Okay.
For,
both permits covered,
correct, yeah,
if you expect action on both permits.
we do.
Okay.
We would like action on those permits.
All right, anything further today?
Moves adjourned.
Second.
All right, we will, all those in favor, saying aye. We will be adjourned.
Karen, should I leave the meeting?
Yep.